With that guy mounted up, we are gonna turn to our Boxo parts and dig into the Summit box. Something from Summit that says it causes cancer. Warning: cancer, reproductive harm. So they're AN fittings. I don't intend in putting AN fittings in my reproductive organs. What's going on, YouTube? Levi at Old Iron Off-Road out here today. Back on this guy. We've actually managed to make a fair bit of progress on this guy off camera. Thought I'd give you a quick overview of what we've got going on to date. Kind of get you caught up and in the know of where we're actually at this point. Today, we're going to talk about transmission coolers. So obviously in the world of rock crawling and off-roading, and even in daily use or towing situations, automatic transmissions, the life of an automatic transmission is its ability to stay cool. When you add heat to a transmission, you're basically shortening its lifespan, pretty much baking the guts out of it. So this guy, we've decided that we're gonna add an external cooler. We're also running the factory cooler in this radiator, but we're actually gonna make it pass through this guy as well. So that's gonna be the gist of the video. We're gonna jump in plumbing this guy. We've got some really nice stuff from Summit. We're going with all AN fittings. We're actually gonna get this guy fit up in front of the radiator so it's also directly in the airflow of the cooling fans. And we're gonna get this guy all plumbed up and happy. And we're gonna take you along for the ride. But before we get too deep in the transmission cooler stuff, let's take a quick second and let's catch you guys up on where we're at in the build process. Also, real quick, reach down there, click the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video, and also push the bell icon for notifications when new videos are uploaded. So as you can see, we've made quite a bit of progress on this guy. Most of the wiring is in place. Some of it needs to be addressed and buttoned up. There's the taillight harness section still has to be pulled into place and terminated. As far as the dash connections go, most of the dash connections have been made. Brake light switch is wired in, headlight switch is wired in, wire stubbed out for wipers, turn signal or steering column plug. This is all dash stuff. We've got some accessory circuits kind of hanging here for USB ports and some cool stuff that are actually going to be on the face of the dash. As far as the gauges go, we're actually running the Dakota Digital VHX control box. Honestly, it made wiring the gauges really nice. The gauge wiring actually pins out into the Dakota Digital VHX box. And then from the VHX box, you get this little RJ45 plug that plugs into the back of the gauge. 2 gauges and another RJ45 piggybacks off the other gauge. So super nice. On this guy, we are running a 21 circuit quick wire harness. One cool thing I like about the quick wire harness is it does have a kill switch located on the back side of the fuse panel. So on a vehicle that's not super secure, you reach in there, click the switch, nobody can steal your vehicle. Well, hopefully nobody can steal your vehicle. Hopefully they're not that smart to figure it out. On the engine side of things, we actually have the engine harness installed as well. We're running a BP Automotive harness on this guy. And we have all of the engine side of things buttoned up here. PCM, TAC module, fuse box, plugs, and we have actually already integrated the harness into the 21 circuit quick wire. We are running a big nasty Griffin radiator with big dual SPA fans, and we came up with this nifty radiator support bracket, and it is also cradled along the bottom. Some of the other wiring, as I've mentioned, the engine stuff is all laid out, and you can see where it stubs into the firewall there. A couple of mega fuses on the firewall for incoming main powers and some other stuff, some other accessory stuff that we need to power. I really like the mega fuses. It gives a nice tie-in point for any of the main incoming harness wires. So got the headlight harness dressed in, got our power steering cooler installed. Tranny wiring is hooked up, speedo stuff. Yeah, we've made quite a bit of progress on this guy, and we have since restocked our parts supply. We've got a miscellaneous smattering of pieces parts. We've got a winter shifter with the neutral safety switch stuff. We've got all our shocks, our shock mounting. We've got a huge assortment of exhaust supplies. On the exhaust, we're going to keep it nice and simple. We're actually going to end up going from a 2.5-inch exhaust on the exhaust manifolds, wiring into a 3-inch, and then we've just got a single in, single out muffler, and we're actually running a Flow FX by Flowmaster full stainless steel muffler that should be nice and throaty and rowdy. Everybody should know that there's a 6-liter in this guy. So yeah, I think that about catches us up on the goings on of this vehicle. But like I said, today is going to be all about keeping this transmission cool and hopefully keeping it alive in the rock crawling world. So without further ado, let's start making things happen. All right, so the first thing that we need to work out is we need to get this guy mounted up. So we have this existing cross member radiator support mount that I built. We've also got the cradle. The easiest way to make this happen is we're probably just going to cut some flat sheet and do a couple of tabs. We're going to do a tab off the bottom side of this, bolt through the top side of this, and then we're going to do a couple of more tabs up, catch these lower bolt holes. And we're going to space this guy about 3/8 of an inch off of the face of the radiator. So again, as I mentioned, this cooler is actually going to be tied to this, so we're going to have double the cooling capacity. For routing purposes, I believe what we're going to end up doing with the exhaust is we're going to drop over, we're going to Y in and over to the passenger side, do a passenger side run out the back, turn out on the passenger side with the tailpipe. So the right hand side is going to be dedicated. We've got some fuel lines running on this side. Our brake lines are going to be running on this side. Trans cooler lines are going to be running on this side. So with everything ran down the passenger side, everything should be nice and away from heat sources. So like I mentioned, first thing on the top side of that mount, we're just going to rip out a couple of 2-inch strips out of this 16-gauge steel. We'll pull the core mount apart and we'll get these all tacked up, and then we'll figure out how long we need the bottom side to be. Should be pretty straightforward on making this all happy. And that's pretty much as simple as that. I think that will function well. Also, just so you notice, we threw a little set of dimple dies in behind the power steering cooler so that it will also be in direct airflow of the coolant fans. So yeah, we've got that worked out, splashed some paint on it, and we can bolt everything back up and we can move on to plumbing, throwing some fittings in and kind of figuring out our routing. Well, ain't that just pretty? One thing that is worth mentioning, I'm always a little concerned about mounting direction on these trans coolers as far as orientation, about bleed back and whatnot, and creating an air cavity, potential air cavity at startup. I did research on this cooler and it said that it did not care what direction it was mounted. You can mount it straight up, down, sideways, any way you wanted to. So best orientation that fit our needs, we ended up with the coolers down. It said that the line pressure from the transmission will push through there, not a problem. So for what it's worth, if anybody sees how I mount it and doesn't like it, comment below and let me know what you think on that. That is actually always something that I have been concerned and paid attention about. I know the tube style is a little different. This is a plate and fin, but again, the directions on this guy said mount it however, so we mounted it however. With that guy mounted up, we are going to turn to our box of parts and dig into the Summit box. Something from Summit that says it causes cancer. Warning: cancer, reproductive harm. So they're AN fittings. I don't intend in putting AN fittings in my reproductive organs. So let's get some fittings put on the transmission. Let's get some fittings put on the radiator and on the cooler, kind of see what orientation and direction we need on those guys. And we can actually start making some fittings or making some sections of hose and get this guy plumbed up. All right, so we got all of our little fittings unpacked. One thing that I will mention on this, we are going to be using a thread sealant paste with PTFE on these guys. Anytime you're dealing with transmission cooler lines, you want to be really careful what you use on threads, and you want to make absolutely sure that you don't get any on the inside of the fitting, because you do not want to push any kind of sealer into the actual transmission itself. It can absolutely cause issues. So with that in mind, we are going to start fitting these up. We've got some 1/2 inch MPT to -6 for this dude. We've got some 1/4 MPT -6 for this dude, and we've got the appropriate transmission fittings for the 4L60. They are right here, and these are actually a -6 to a crush washer. I'm hoping this is the right part number. It's a 640-520. It's actually listed for the TH350, 400, 700R, which 700R and the 4L60 are pretty much the same tranny. So I'm gonna assume that they're right. We'll double check the factory fittings. The push connector are still in the transmission. Want to make sure that's good. Again, this is a 4L60, so there's not a whole lot of difference in the transcooler fittings, I don't think. One thing you got to be really careful of on a 4L80E is there are some different transcooler fittings for that. There are different links in the tube. If you don't get those right, you will burn up a transmission. So food for thought. This is not that tranny, but again, worth mentioning. So let's get some fittings on this thing. All right, so first thing I like to do when I'm plumbing one of these is kind of get a rough in of the fittings and the orientation. That way you get a good line of sight on your direction and how you're actually gonna plumb this thing together. So we're gonna come out of the trans and we're gonna come along the chassis. We'll actually have some cushion clamps fastening it to the inside of the chassis. We're gonna come into this fitting. We're gonna come out of this fitting, loop around the radiator, come into the lower fitting on the external cooler, and then we'll come back out of this guy, go through there, and we'll also join back up with the other cushion clamp sets right down the chassis, back over the tranny and into the tranny. Should be nice and tidy when we get it all buttoned up. And we're gonna start measuring hoses and actually making our hoses. All right, so we got all our hoses made up. At this point, it's a good idea. All right, so we got all our hoses made up. At this point, it's a good idea to take some brake cleaner and some compressed air and blow through these guys just to make sure there's no residual trash or anything. After all, you are putting it into an automatic transmission. The last thing you want to do is inadvertently add some trash to the system. So like I said, just throw a quick spritz of brake clean, hit them with some compressed air. We're gonna do that. We're gonna put on the truck, take a look at how everything worked out, and then this project for Mr. Big Bird will pretty much be buttoned up. All right. All right, I think that about wraps it up for this guy. Happy with how the transmission cooler install came out. Happy with how the lines came out all routed. Should keep the training nice and cool. Really happy with where this truck is headed. It's going to be a fun ride when it's all said and done. Got a couple of cool videos coming down the pipes. Next video, I think we're going to end up tackling a Curry anti-rock sway bar, one of the universal jobbers, show you guys how to make that happen. And then also we will be tackling the brakes on this thing as far as the plumbing goes, front to back, show you how we install our flex line, show you how we plumb the hard lines and make all that happy. Also, we got a couple of other things coming up in the future. A buddy of mine is actually a professional photographer. I'm not going to tell you who he is yet. He also has a YouTube channel that he's working on growing, so when it pops up, I'm going to ask you guys if you would jump over to show him some love. We're not there yet, but anyway, he is working on a really nice intro video for us, really professional looking, really cinematic. Also looking forward to having him do some editing for us in the future, trying to take this channel to a more professional level. I hope you guys enjoy these videos. I really can't thank you guys at home enough for taking the time to watch these videos. And for now, I think that's all we got. As always, enjoy.